Okay, so here's how the event is kind of going to run. We're going to have speaker panel introductions, and then Mimi Fuchs, we're going to play her pre-recorded video. We're going to have a Q&A with the speaker panel, a Q&A with attendees and the speaker panel where you can ask your questions. Then we're going to have a Kahoot and closing remarks. So, hi everyone, my name is Claire Kildall. I'm a student at YK High School and I'm planning to pursue a career in STEM in the future. So throughout my life, I've always kind of noticed the gender gap in STEM because in middle school, I noticed that most of my STEM clubs in my school or like the robotics team were heavily male dominated. So I wanted to create an action plan to address the issue in the STEM field. And I did that through the Girls Talk Back program over the summer. And that led me to create this event.
My name is Rania Steinbach. I'm currently a marine biology major and a botany minor at Manoa. I'm originally from New Mexico, but as soon as I got here, I was also looking for an on-campus job and have been working with the American Association of University Women, which is also the program that puts on the Girls Talk Back program that Claire was talking about. And so at a final kind of presentation meeting, one of the members of the AAUW Honolulu branch, who I think had mentored Claire, had put us into contact because I hosted a similar Women in STEM event for my campus last semester. And yeah, I'm obviously in STEM right now, plan to continue pursuing STEM, and I'm just really excited about also getting other women involved and especially, starting young.
So the sponsors for our event are the Hawaii Science and Technology Museum. They do a lot of work surrounding STEM and have some great programs and opportunities open for children and girls in middle school. So those will be provided after the event. And also we have the AAUW at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. And I think Rania can speak more about that.
Yeah, so we're an on-campus registered independent organization. We're basically just a club on campus. That's where I'm working with AAUW, and we just do a lot of outreach on our campus, and even in this case now, kind of by extension, this event and just like other collaboration with, the other islands, their AAUW branches. And yeah, so we're really happy to be a part of this.
So our first speaker is Heather Bottom. Heather is a systems engineer at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, currently working on the SphereX and NISAR missions. She previously worked on development, INT, launch, and operations for the Mars 2020 Perseverance rover. Heather has also worked at SpaceX on the Crew Dragon capsule. Her degrees include a master's in space engineering from California Institute of Technology and a bachelor's in astrophysics from Columbia University. She grew up in Arizona dancing and singing and pursued a previous career in professional dancing as a Radio City Rockette and in the Broadway national tour of A Chorus Line. Heather enjoys the ever-changing role of systems engineering during a project's life cycle. The most meaningful part of the job is the ways in which scientists and engineers work together to further space exploration and continuously learn more about our solar system and the universe.
So thank you so much for joining us today, Heather, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Our next speaker is Renee Ishisaka. Renee Ishisaka is a civil and structural engineer with SSFM International Incorporated and is licensed in both Hawaii and Guam. She has worked on projects such as the West Hawaii Civic Center, the Uma Uma Bridge rehabilitation in Kilauea, emergency road repairs. She was born and raised in Hilo and graduated from Waikea High School. When she is not working, she enjoys spending time with her two huskies and crafting.
Renee, thank you also for being here.
Our next speaker is Heather Kimball. Heather Kimball started her career as a scientist working for Myriad Genetics, the company that developed the BRCA1 and BRCA2 breast cancer genetic test. She then moved to Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, where she worked on the Human Genome Project. Upon moving to Hawaii, Heather worked with both the University of Hawaii at Manoa and Hilo on various agricultural projects. In 2014, she started the Tropical Conservation Biology and Environmental Science graduate program at UH Hilo and focused on GIS and ecosystem management decision-making. After completing her degree, Heather started a consulting company focused on science communication and policy surrounding climate change, and lectured in GIS at UH Hilo. Through her consulting work, she determined the best place to influence climate policy was in government, so she ran for elected office. Heather is now serving in her first term as a county council member in Hawaii County.
Thank you, Heather, also for joining us. We're really excited to have you all here. And Hoku, would you mind giving us a quick introduction?
Aloha mai kako. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, ladies. Kalamaya'u for not submitting my biopic. But so I am Hoku Halalani Pihana no Hawaii Puna Hawaii me Kaumau ke Kane. I am a Native Hawaiian Wahine, have a background in marine science, tropical conservation biology masters. I was in the same 2014 cohort as Heather. So I use wa'a, or outrigger canoes, as vehicles to malama our ocean. So we implement Native Hawaiian and institutional sciences to care for our ocean. So we do a lot of oceanography practices, as well as looking at olelo, mo'olelo, olelo Hawaii, mo'olelo oli chants and such to identify historical patterns of ecological processes over time, as well as other things. I'm currently the Rapid Ohia Death Outreach Extension Specialist for Hawaii Island. So as kind of learning about Ranja's, excuse me, degree fields, I think it's important to understand, especially as island people, the relationship between our oceans and our forests, and how they function together, and what we need to do as stewards to care for these systems collectively. So mahalo for having me. I am going to be enjoying the time. Look forward to the questions and all of the cool information shared. Malama.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. And then our last panelist unfortunately was not able to join us, but I'll let Claire introduce her.
So we have Mimi Fuchs. Mimi Fuchs is a former telescope systems specialist for the James Clerk Maxwell Telescope. Prior to JCMT, she worked in telescope operations and public outreach for the Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory Submillimeter Array. Before moving to the Big Island of Hawaii, Mimi enjoyed teaching in science museums in Pennsylvania and North Carolina. She received her Bachelor's of Science in Astrophysics from Haverford College and is currently a GAANN graduate fellow in systems engineering at Drexel University.
So we're gonna start by playing these pre-recorded videos, and please do let me know if there are any audio issues, but this should work.
Aloha everyone, my name is Mimi Fuchs, and I'm excited to share a little bit of a video talking to you all about my experiences in STEM. I feel really lucky that I spent 5 years working atop Mauna Kea as a telescope systems specialist for some of the sub-millimeter radio frequency telescopes. When I was working on Mauna Kea, it was my job to help scientists who came from around the world, and sometimes from the Big Island, to help them take pictures of outer space. These pictures and some of the data that we gathered of these telescopes were able to help them answer a variety of questions they have about the universe. Often, the scientists I worked with were trying to figure out how stars formed, how planets formed, what black holes looked like. And in order to be able to answer these questions, they needed really, really good pictures, really good observations from telescopes. And there's no better place to take pictures of space than atop Mauna Kea. It was such a pleasure and a privilege to spend any time there on the mountain, let alone 5 years. But it wasn't a journey that I necessarily knew I was going to find myself on. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my journey in STEM. I grew up in North Carolina. I fell in love with science when I was in 5th grade. I had to do a science project on anything I wanted, and I chose to do it on the planet Neptune. not because I really liked space that time, but because it was such a beautiful blue, green, teal color, and I just wanted to know more about it. And doing the school project, I learned that Neptune had seasons that could last over 40 years. 40 years! This blew my mind as a 5th grader. And it made me realize that if other planets could have seasons, maybe they could have life. Maybe they could have environments that were similar to the ones that we saw here on Earth. And this got me really excited about outer space and about learning about the cosmos. And I really liked science in middle school, but by the time I got to high school and was thinking about going to college, I have to say that I didn't necessarily think that I was going to go into science. I loved English, and I loved history, and I loved dancing, and I wanted to make the world a better place. And I was very social, and I loved being on teams and collaborating, and I thought I was very creative, and I didn't necessarily know that those qualities about myself would have a place in science. But I really loved math, and I felt really lucky that when I started college, I had a... Aloha, everyone! But by the time I got to high school and teams and collaborating, and I thought I was very creative, and I didn't necessarily know that those qualities about myself would have a place in science. But I really loved math, and I felt really lucky that when I started college, I had a professor who told me that, you can do anything in college. And I had signed up for an astronomy class for non-majors because I didn't think I was going to study astronomy. And she really encouraged me to give it a go, to start taking physics and to keep working on my math and to see if I liked astronomy. And I took this first astronomy class and I was hooked. I couldn't stop thinking about space. I couldn't stop thinking about how creative we actually need in order to be able to study it and to answer questions about outer space. I started learning how to computer program, and I never thought I was going to be a coder. And I found myself loving programming, that it was almost like learning a new language. And just like with any other language, you can write stories or poetry, you could write incredible things with computer code that could really help us answer some questions we have about the universe if we get the right pictures and the right data. And when I was a teenager, I was still interested in astronomy, and I learned about the telescopes on the Big Island. And I remember thinking, you know what, if I can keep doing space, if I can keep studying science, maybe, just maybe one day I will get there too. So after I graduated college, I graduated with my degree in astrophysics from Haverford College in 2013. I started working at a science museum. I wanted everyone to learn more about space, and I wanted to make it accessible to everybody. And I was still dreaming, though, of trying to get to the Big Island. On a regular basis, I was looking for jobs on Mauna Kea, and I was trying to get jobs that worked with telescopes in order to give me a skill set so I could one day get to Mauna Kea. And I feel really, really lucky that eventually in 2016, I moved to the Big Island, and I was able to start working for the Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory, and then later work for the James Clerk Maxwell Telescope, and work on these really, really large dish antennas and use them to help take really incredible images and really incredible observations of the cosmos. But it wouldn't have been possible if I didn't have really incredible teachers along the way, if I didn't have really incredible mentors along the way who encouraged me to keep going. Studying astronomy and physics was really, really hard. And when I first started in it, I thought that if I wasn't good at it right away, that it wasn't worth to keep trying, that maybe I should just, stick with English or history and something when I was getting better grades in. But I feel very lucky that I had classmates who really encouraged me to keep going, that I had teachers and mentors who encouraged me to keep going. And, just like with anything that's really tough, I think we can all think about skills that we've learned where they were really hard in the beginning, but it got easier as we kept working at it. This was definitely true about astronomy for me, where at first my astronomy and physics classes were so hard. And it's not like they got easier, but I got better at learning, right? I got better at taking tests, and I got better at doing problem sets, and I became more familiar with the subject matter, and I felt more comfortable asking questions. I was so worried about being wrong or embarrassing myself in front of a class when I first started studying astronomy. And, I really feel lucky that I found myself in classroom environments where it was okay to be wrong. if you're wrong about something, then it gives you an opportunity to learn what is right and to learn how to do things better. And now, unfortunately, I'm no longer living on the Big Island, but that's because I'm going back to school to get my master's in engineering. Working on the telescopes at Mauna Kea made me realize just how much I love getting to work on scientific instruments, and I want to build them, and I really would like to use them in order to continue to take incredible observations. And so I feel very lucky that my time working with the telescopes has inspired me to go back to school and work on my master's in engineering. And so I currently live in Philadelphia to do that, but hope to get back to the islands very soon. So it's hard to choose just one favorite memory from my time working as a telescope systems specialist on Mauna Kea. But one of the coolest science projects I got to work on and contribute to was the Event Horizon Telescopes initiative that helped take first picture of a black hole. You know, when I was growing up and when I was studying astronomy, we had these scientific illustrations or models for black holes, but we didn't actually have the capacity with our telescopes, with our instrumentation, which are theories, to actually be able to take a picture of it, to see what the edge of a black hole looked like, and to be able to play a very small part in the Event Horizon Telescopes first picture of black hole by working with the sub-millimeter array and the James Clerk Maxwell telescope and helping operate them during some of these telescope runs was really exciting. And it was so exciting to take this data with the telescope in Hawaii and know that there was telescopes around the world also pointing at these black holes really, really far away from us, taking these images that later we were going to combine in order to get this first picture of a black hole. Maybe you've seen it. It looks like a very beautiful orange, red, glowy donut. And it was so exciting. There's something really wonderful about working in science and feeling like, you know, even though we're one person, we can work together and really push forth our understanding of what we know about the universe. And that was just one of those experiences that was just so exciting. And if I think about it, you know, it's very clear to me that I wouldn't have been able to have the career, that I wouldn't have had the education I had if it weren't for the teachers I had in high school who encouraged me, if it wasn't for the professors I had in in college who encouraged me, if it wasn't for some of my managers or some of my colleagues I had while working on Mauna Kea who really encouraged me, you know. Being in STEM can be really hard at times. And so finding people who can help support you, I think makes it a lot easier. I have a few pieces of advice for folks who are interested, whether you're going into STEM or whether you're going into something else. I think it's important to study something and pursue a job in something you like, you know. I feel so lucky that my interest in astronomy as a little kid allowed me to then work on these telescopes on Mauna Kea. It exceeded my wildest dreams. So if you're going to choose to pursue something, choose something you like, something you're interested in. It could be dancing, it could be astronomy, it could be English, you know, it can be a variety of things, but choose something that you're excited about and that you want to learn about. And then my other piece of advice is it's probably going to be really hard at some point. And maybe you'll do poorly on a test, or maybe you won't do well on a project, or maybe you'll really struggle with a concept. But that's not a reason to give up. Science can be hard. A lot of things can be hard, but I really encourage you to keep going. Even when it's hard, the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. And, you know, there's a really wonderful feeling of recognizing that something can be very hard and overcoming it. And I think I feel very fortunate that, you know, I didn't stop doing science even when I got a poor grade on one of my classes. And I think I really attribute that from the community I had, from the students I was studying with, to the professors and teachers I had who really encouraged me to keep going. And the third is you can always change. Maybe you're studying something you don't like it. You can switch your major. Maybe you're in a job and you realize you love the technical side of it, but there's not enough working with the community. You can change that too. You can always switch jobs. You know, you're not bound into anything. And so I feel really lucky that I've had jobs working in science museums, but also working in observatories, and I've loved both of them. So just know that there's like a lot of different jobs out there, and there's a lot of different roles you can take to follow your interest and your passion. And if it's not the right fit the first time around, you can always try something else. If you have any questions, if you want to ask me, please feel free. I'll pass along my email, and I would love to hear from you. And so whether you're studying STEM or whether you're studying something else, I just wish you good luck, and hopefully I'll see you the next time I'm on island. Ahui-ho!
Awesome. Well, that was Mimi's video. And so we're very grateful that she was able to send that in and still kind of have her presence in this space today. And now we're going to move on to our wonderful speaker panel.
So it's hard to choose just one favorite.
There we go. So we're just going to do this kind of round robin style. So we have a couple questions that we've selected. And then if anyone wants to just jump in and go first, and otherwise we can kind of call on people and just kind of be able to hear everyone's answers, stories, get a better picture of your views, your experiences. And we really hope this will be beneficial to all of the participants and anyone who may see this recorded video afterwards.
So the first question is, when did you first get interested in STEM, and was it something you were thinking about as early as middle school? If not, when?
And so I guess we can just start calling on people. Heather Kimball, do you want to start us off?
Sure. So I grew up, my dad was a physics teacher. And my mom taught French and German and art. And I remember at a very young age, even elementary school, my dad would take me out. He had built a telescope by himself. He had ground the mirror himself, and we'd go out and we'd go look at the stars together, look at the universe. And we would do this at a property. We had a place up in northern Michigan that was out in the woods. It's 20 acres. And I just spent the entire time during the summer, because they were both teachers, they were off. We just spent the entire summer out there in the woods. And it was through that experience of looking at the stars with my dad and being out there and in nature that I just developed this deep love and passion for the natural world, and this deep curiosity about it. And I think it's part of human nature. If there's something that you love and that you care about, you want to understand it more deeply. And so that, I think, is kind of the seed that was planted in me that made me want to go study science as I went forward. I will say that by the time I reached college, I wasn't maybe as definite in that idea. My first year of college, I was either going to learn French and become a translator at the United Nations, or I was going to write the next great American novel, or I was going to become a politician, or I was going to study science. I didn't really know. Those were my top four. But then I had a really fabulous teacher in genetics that really solidified it for me, that was that passion, that seed that had been planted way back when was still there and wanting to grow. And it encouraged me to really then narrow my focus on studying cellular and molecular biology, and really understanding the fascinating world that is our inner biota. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that response. Renee, do you want to go next?
Sure. So I first got interested in STEM when I was in about 4th grade. I started going to the Future Flight program that Art and Rin Kimura used to put on. And it was a lot of fun, and it kind of got you interested and excited about space. And I really wanted to be an aeronautical engineer. And that was my dream growing up. Until reality set in. And back in those days, there was no such thing as remote work. So I realized that to have a career in it, I would have to move to the mainland, and that's not something that I wanted to do. So then I was kind of looking for another spark. So through high school, I had planned to go into law and become a lawyer because I like to argue points and look for problems, solve problems, and just figure out puzzles. And then somebody came to talk to us from UH Manoa's engineering program my senior year. I was like, hey, how about that type of engineering? It's not aerospace engineering, but it's something I can do here. Maybe that'll be cool. And let's try it out. So my dream kind of morphed, but I was thinking about a STEM career from a young age.
Thank you so much. And then I'm just going to go down my screen. So Heather Bottom, can you please go next?
Sure. So I actually didn't know a lot about STEM when I was a kid. I was really focused on dance and music and art and being very creative as a kid. I didn't actually learn about the sciences until like high school. I started to get a little bit interested in it. I was always really good at math. I didn't really know what to do with it. So I took a summer course on like cosmology, and I thought it was really interesting. And I just started reading books about cosmology, which I laugh about because as a kid, I hated to read. And my parents were like, oh my gosh, you're reading for the first time. And there were all these books about astronomy and such. But yeah, so I didn't really get interested in it until high school. And I would say really didn't know much about STEM until high school. Actually, one thing on the Big Island I think is really interesting is there's a lot of robotics going on here. And I always joke that we never had robotics when I went to school. So I'm really interested to learn more about that on the Big Island. And so anyways, so I got interested in cosmology and I studied it through college. But the one thing I wanted to say, which kind of relates back, is I didn't know much about engineering either. So like I said, I was very creative. I liked math. I kind of got into the astronomy stuff. But then through another internship I did in college, I learned about NASA, and not just astronomy, but like space exploration through satellites and journeys to Mars and all that sort of thing. And I realized that it's not just scientists that study the space. It's also engineers that help, craft things that you send up there. And I thought that was really cool. And so I would say I started to learn more about engineering. And while I was pursuing this career in dance in New York, I still always had that kind of like curious side to myself with science, and eventually decided to go into engineering. So I would say, I was a late bloomer in terms of the STEM fields, but that's also to say that I think both sides were always, they're always in you. And, the whole idea of like staying true to like what you're interested in is a really good one. So yeah, so anyways, that's my story. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Hoku, would you like to go next?
Yeah, aloha mai, mahalo nui, everybody, for sharing your journey to STEM. I'm like Heather that just spoke. I came into STEM and the interest in just getting into the STEM career fields later on in life. Like when I was 25, I was living in Marin County, California, and I went back to school, community college, and had going liberal arts and not really knowing what direction I wanted to go with my academics, but knowing that I was ready to be in college. I think it was after taking like some math classes, because when I was younger, I didn't really think I liked math. But then when I got into college, I started seeing math differently, and I found myself really interested in it. And I liked how, identified it as its own language. And then kind of started moving into the conservation realm of like, how do we apply this into our natural environment? Because I started seeing math everywhere, right? Like in our daily lives, math's all over the place. But And then it kind of went beyond that, like just really getting interested in our natural environment and being in that space. And having been raised on the mainland, I was born over here in Hawaii, but I was raised in Southern California. That disconnect is my that my identity as a Native Hawaiian person was also kind of in flux. Yeah. So after I graduated and had my first son, I came home and decided to go back to school as, you know, a single mom re-entering that academic realm and get my undergrad in the marine science space. And I decided to switch to ocean because of my pilina and relationship to my papa, who has throughout my whole life, he had passed when I was 5. So I always identified him as being in that realm, that space, that ocean. And he has my va'a that took me on my journeys through life. Yeah. So science became, and the STEM field started to just become something that I really just liked over time. Like I thought I didn't like them when I was in middle school and high school. I definitely was not present in the STEM fields. But when I started kind of just started to identify myself, especially after I became a mom, STEM was really cool. And then looking at it through the lens of our kupuna and our ancestors and how they understood it without, you know, beyond the practices of what we identify as STEM, and seeing the science in what we as a Native Hawaiian community have perpetuated throughout generations is started to just really awaken all of these other passions in me to blend the two knowledge systems and recognize their purpose and function and how we care for our resources here in Hawaii. So that was what really awakened my STEM experience, was first really reconnecting with myself as a woman and becoming passionate about strengthening my knowledge and skill sets, and as a mother, and then as a Kanaka Maoli, as a Native Hawaiian person. So that was my STEM journey, and now I use my va'a as vehicles to care for our oceans. Yeah, mahalo nui. That was a good question. I had to think on that one.
Thank you all so much for sharing kind of how you first got interested in STEM. Also, on a side note, if any of the participants have questions, please put them into the chat because we will moderate those afterwards or hold on to them for afterwards. Because, you know, all of your different stories and paths into STEM have been different. And I think there are a lot of follow-up questions that we can talk about afterwards as well, but we will continue with the question part for now.
So our next question is, what was your high school experience like?
Hoku, since you're still sorry.
Go, Hoku.
I was gonna say, Hoku, since you're still spotlighted, if you want to go next.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just laughing at the question, not just because my high school experience, I lived in, like I said, Southern California, Long Beach. I was raised in a very eclectic, crazy, diverse place. I was exposed to a lot of things that were extremely woe in my life, and there was no focus on trying to get to any sort of academic success in my realm. But, you know, there's a lot of social interaction, a lot of fun, a lot of, yeah, it was a blast, I think, but it was a more social experience. So as I got older, like I had said, by the time I hit 25, I think I had really matured and was ready to take on an academic career pathway and get into college. But high school was an experience for sure.
Thank you for sharing, Hoku. Heather, would you like to go next?
Sure. So my high school was actually one of 2 high schools that were essentially on the same campus together. So it kind of had the feel of a university in that you could take classes in both of them. And because we had such a big student body, they had a wide array of different classes. So we had different biology classes rather than just like typical biology and AP biology. We had some specific science classes. We also had some really interesting social studies and English classes. One of the things that I was thinking about in terms of this conversation today was, about mentors and teachers that really inspired me. And I realized that, one of the great teachers I had was my biology teacher in high school, Mr. Goss. He was just so passionate about science. And I remember the labs, he would come in and we would always ask us what we had for dinner. And that was always a big conversation about cooking. He liked to cook. And he also taught us how to learn from the standpoint of we were allowed to bring in any notes in an outline from our reading material for the test. And so if you did a really good job of making an outline, you had a really good prompt for the test and did well on the test. And so it really taught me how to digest and organize scientific information. But even though he was so inspiring, one of the questions I said, well, did I have any women that were inspiring at that point in my life, whether it was high school or my undergraduate studies? And I hadn't really thought about it before, but there were no women educators. And this was, 90s, late 80s, early 90s. It wasn't until I got into graduate school where there were women professors in the STEM field. And so that's a big transition. And I think that we are seeing more women in academia now, but certainly from my experience 20 plus years ago, it was still, even the educational side of STEM was male dominated.
Thank you so much. Renee, do you want to tell us a little bit about your high school experience?
High school was not my favorite this time. I enjoyed college a lot better. I think high school for me was more like a stepping stone to get to college. But I did have some great teachers. Mr. Olive was amazing as always. His chemistry, and he always made learning fun. One thing I always like to point out to students when I do like interactive panels or discussions like this is I heard it a lot in this panel that they love math. I hated math. I still hate math, but I'm still an engineer. So you can still have a STEM career if math is not your favorite subject. So I took a lot of math, but it was just to get it out of the way so I could enjoy the rest of my subjects. I like science a lot better than math, but high school was just high school. Like I mentioned earlier, I wasn't really focused on engineering during high school until my senior year. But I did have physics my senior year, and that was a lot of fun. And that really got me a little bit more interested in it again. So that was my high school experience.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And yeah, I think that is a good reminder. I'm in physics right now, so I'm glad you like physics. Heather, do you want to tell us about your high school experience?
Sure. So I've been lucky to be able to think about it a little bit longer here. So my high school experience was really, really busy. I went to a public high school in Arizona, and I kind of saw high school or school as just like to get through it so that I could go and do theater. I was a theater kid, and I used to do theater at a community theater that was about an hour away from my house. So I would go to school and I would study hard and get good grades so that after school I could leave early, drive and go do theater and sing and dance and play piano if I could and whatnot. So like I said, I was kind of a late bloomer when it came to STEM, but I really loved high school in regards to I got to like pursue my passion of the arts. So that was high school for me, and I was a huge nerd and I studied really hard to get good grades. I don't know why, I just did. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, we're going to move on to the next question.
Which is, where did you attend college? What was your major? And did you participate in any special programs?
And Heather, since you're still spotlighted, if you want to go, if you want, we'll just keep going kind of in reverse order, if that's okay with you all.
Sure, yes, so that works. So I went to college in New York City. It's called Columbia University, and I majored in astrophysics. I had a double major in dance for a while, but then I ended up taking a semester off to go actually dance in New York. And then, so I ended up dropping the double major, but I studied astronomy, or astrophysics is what I got my degree in. And then I guess in that regard, I later, in a handful of years later, I ended up going back to school to get a master's in space engineering. So that was kind of my career. And in terms of special programs, I did an internship called the NASA Academy. I don't know if it exists anymore, but it was basically a NASA internship. And I think that was kind of what like turned the corner for me in terms of like what I was really interested in at my core and how I wanted to like further the world throughout my life. So that internship, I think, was the key.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Renee, do you want to go next?
Sure. I went to UH Manoa and I majored in civil engineering. I stayed in the same major my whole college career, and then I ended up getting my master's in civil engineering also. My favorite part of it was structural, so my focus was structural, even though we didn't have a structural engineering degree. Special programs, I was part of ASCE, which is the professional organization for civil engineering. It's the American Society of Civil Engineers. And they put on a conference every year where you have competitions. So this is actually the part that kind of got me hooked in the presentation that they did to our school. Was they do a steel bridge competition where the students build like a scale model of a bridge. They do a concrete canoe where you build a canoe out of concrete and you go and race it. And yeah, those are the two main events, but there's a whole bunch of other events that you participate in. That was really fun for all of us.
That's really cool. Before we move on to the next person, how does the concrete canoe work?
So the point is to like create a lightweight concrete mixture, and then so it'll actually, and then design the whole shape and everything so it'll actually float. And then yeah, you have to design it, you have to make it, and you have to race it. So it's really fun.
Dang, that is very cool. And it sounds like Hoku's cousin did that too. So that's
awesome.
Definitely awesome.
Yeah, it was at UH Manoa he was doing it.
Yep.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much. Heather Kimball, would you like to go next?
Sure. I studied at the University of Michigan and Ann Arbor, and my degree was in biology with a focus on cellular and molecular biology. And the one special program is I did participate in the honors program, and that required a year-long internship in the lab. So in addition to doing the coursework the last year of my undergraduate studies, I did a lab program. We were actually looking at how E. coli was able to be resistant to certain antibiotics, and really fascinating how that worked. And then at the end, I had to write a research paper. So very similar to what you might ultimately do in graduate school. And then I did do graduate school here at UH Hilo as with Hoku at the Tropical Conservation and Biology and Environmental Science program.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And Hoku, could you answer this one too?
Aloha, mahalo, ladies, for sharing. So yeah, so like I had shared before, I attended, so I got my associates at the College of Marin in Marin County, California, and then came over here to University of Hawaii at Hilo, where I got my bachelor's in marine science and then master's in tropical conservation biology and environmental science. I think a special program that I participated in throughout my academic career was the Chiaholi STEM program that is hosted out of the University of Hawaii at Hilo. And it is a program for Native Hawaiian and other underrepresented minorities majoring in the STEM fields. The program is still in operations and super successful today since I've left the program, but it's been in existence for about a decade now. And what Chiaholi did for me personally, just as a single mom coming back into school and wanting to find my space and my peoples as I transition into this, commitment to self. So it provided that hui of support that I was looking for, as well as that space that I was looking for that enabled me to be a Native Hawaiian person in these science realms and identify how I can apply my cultural identity and practice along with my scientific tools and knowledge to develop projects and research experiences that are relevant to Hawaii, our communities, and sustaining our food resources and people. So Chiaholi, I still engage with them, and I really feel that they were, I really know that they were a very important part of my academic journey. Without that program, I don't think I would be able to be sitting here in this conversation today. They really created that foundation for me. So mahalo for asking.
Thank you so much for sharing. And before we move on to the next question, kind of a follow-up for this one that I think is helpful for participants now, even if they're in middle school or if anyone is watching this recording and is in high school, what types of factors factored into where you did choose to go to college? What kinds of considerations do you think were really helpful in choosing a good place for you? And what kinds of things were you specifically looking at when making this decision? And Hoku, since you're still spotlighted, if you want to jump in on this one, that'd be awesome.
So for me personally, the biggest factor for me was I wanted to come home. I wanted to raise my kids in Hawaii. I wanted us to reconnect with our identities as Native Hawaiians. So growing, being at the University of Hawaii Hilo, especially as opposed to Manoa, I really felt like it was a really good, healthy space for us as a hui, as a family, to grow together throughout my academic experiences. Like all my kids know how to throw quadrats and lay transects and collect data and oli and do all of these things that I feel like we wouldn't be able to experience in any other place. And so that was a huge part of my decision for coming to UH Hilo specifically.
Awesome, thank you. And Renee, what kinds of factors were important to you?
Well, it helped that the presentation was done by students at UH Manoa, but one of the factors that kind of played a big role in my choosing a college was I wanted to stay close to home. I wanted to leave home and be on my own and experience that to grow, but I also wanted to be close to home and close to my family. So I figured Manoa was a good balance between the two because it's on a different island, so I could kind of get away and learn to be my own person, but at the same time I was close enough to come visit. So that's how I chose where to go.
Awesome, thank you. And Heather Kimball, do you want to go next?
Sure. I chose the University of Michigan because it was also close to home for me, and they have a really good program. In fact, we call Harvard the Michigan of the East Coast. But the other factor was cost, and of course I was paying in-state tuition because I was born and raised in Michigan. And so if there were a message that I wanted to send out to the young folks today, that's a significant consideration when looking at college, especially now. I mean, it was not as costly when I went as it is now. And I'm currently helping one of my daughters who's just about to graduate figure out where she wants to go. And while you want to go to a place that has an excellent program in whatever area that you're interested in, you want to be a careful shopper and make sure you're not just paying for the name of an institution or something like that. You want to make sure that those dollars you're going to spend for your education are going to be meaningful, and that's a certain pressure that I think are on kids today that wasn't so significant when I was shopping around for colleges. But the key, I think, is really taking your time and doing comparison shopping for the right program for you, whether it's a big school, a small school, and thinking about how you're going to come out of it in terms of whether you're going to be carrying student debt or not. It's important to be a careful shopper when you're looking for your college of choice.
Thank you so much. And as someone who, just entered college, I can definitely agree with that. And appreciate that you mentioned that. I think that's a very good point. Heather, do you want to go next?
Sure. So for college, I actually wanted to go far away from home so that I could be in a place that was like the best dancing that you could find in America. So I went to New York, which was very far away from Arizona. But I was actually thinking it might be more relevant to talk about how I went back into engineering after I was in New York. When I chose to go into engineering, I found a school that was close to my home of Arizona. I was actually in California. And cost was definitely a factor. I had been considering going to business school for some sort of business administration with space thrown in there somehow. But ultimately I decided that engineering would be a better path. Just because it got more down into like the technical details of some of the work that you would be doing for space exploration. And then also because of the cost, I was able to get like a fully funded program in California under like a scholarship type of thing instead of business school, which was like, regardless, like incredibly expensive, and you would leave it with a bunch of debt. And so to go along those lines, I thought that was like a really good point, and something I'd been thinking about as other folks were talking was also that when I chose to go back to school for my master's, the cost was really a consideration in that, and also going back to home. So
awesome. Thank you all for sharing. We'll move on to the next question.
What resources helped you get into the career you are in now?
And Heather, since you're so spotlighted, if you want to start us off on this one.
Sure. Resources. So yeah, like I said, I did an internship with NASA, and it taught me how to create like a network of people that can help you in your career. So through that internship, I met a number of folks who became like friends, and to this day, 12 years later, I still reach out to them. Even if you haven't spoken with them for a while, I think that creating that network of people, and you can create that network of people, now in middle school or high school, or even college to that matter, your friends are your network, but you also kind of create like a work environment of network of people as well. So I think that was a big factor in all of that. I'm sure I could come up with a name of a teacher that was my favorite, but I would say for me, it wasn't as much about the teachers, and it was more about the people that I work with and the people that I'm surrounded by every day at work that have really helped me in my career. And to that regard, I also wanted to say that the women that I work with today, I think, have been a very big influence and resource when it comes to managing being a mom. I have a 1-year-old daughter now, and so figuring out how to be a mom and be in the workplace and navigate, the realms of a project at NASA, I think that has been a huge resource. So that's also been very important.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. We'll switch up the order a little bit. Hoku, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So what resources helped me get into the career I'm in now? It's interesting. So a lot of things kind of built up. Now that I work in the forest realm with rapid ohia death, and actually speaking for our ohia trees, I kind of think back of what led me to this space, because I always just figured that I would be working in the marine field because I have a marine science degree and so on and so forth. But the relationships that I created over time with the different people that I engaged with in different community groups or working groups and such really led me to this position that I hold now as the outreach extension specialist for Rapidoheia. And I thought to myself, why am I in the forest right now? Why is it important to be in this realm? And I started thinking, as a marine scientist coming into the forestry space and the INS space, I started seeing relationships between the two environments through the lens of the ocean. So I was seeing things in the forest as they related to ocean species, recognizing ohia as a foundational organism within our forest, much like how coral are for our coral reef systems. And so that really helped me understand the purpose of why I sit in this seat today, as being an ohia steward, and understanding how I share out with our community of how we can tend to our forests, not just in on our islands, but in our oceans, because those are mala to their forests as well. So I really think it was the hui of people that I had the opportunity to work with over time. Again, like I had mentioned in the last one, Chiaholi was a real foundational experience that I built upon. And I'm currently part of the Native Hawaiian Cultural Working Group for Papahana Mokuakea. So we do a lot of work with just providing names and engaging with other agency partners to really exemplify how we could collaborate with knowledge systems together to care for our resources. So that was a huge one. And that really, all of those relationships and conversations helped me strengthen my position in this seat as the Rapidoheia Deaf Coordinator. So I think it was just, yeah, those relationships built, experiences, being able to have diverse experiences, challenge myself, know that you know, you've got to go experience different realms so you understand the one that you're wanting to take care of. So if I'm an ocean steward, I have to understand the importance of caring for our forests as well. So I think, yeah, that's what led me up to the position that I'm in now. Mahalo for asking.
Thank you so much. Heather, can you go next?
Is that me, Heather, or the?
Sorry, yeah, Heather Kimball. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so certainly agree that the relationship bit is key, and building that community, that network around you. But one thing I will say for myself personally is that you could have never shown me where I am now when I was in high school and had me believe you. The career path that I've taken has been kind of all over the place, and it's all been wonderful, but none of it was planned. And so one of the things that I would say is, as much as you may plan your career trajectory, the key thing I think is to be open to possibilities and prepared for anything that might come your way, because more of this is chance than you might want to believe. It's just being in the right place at the right time with the right skill set, and being willing to take some risks, and not be afraid of failure. One of the stories that I'll tell folks is I was part of the Human Genome Project, and that was a collaboration between 3 laboratories: Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, Los Alamos National Lab, and Lawrence Livermore. And at some point in my work there, Lawrence Berkeley and Lawrence Livermore came together to work at the same facilities, and we had 2 identical lines of production for our DNA sequencing. And so one of us had to get fired, or not fired, but moved to a different position in the position where we had a parallel at the other lab. And so as it turned out, I was not selected as the person, and I was devastated. But what ended up happening is I got moved over into the research and development branch and just exploded off into a whole different direction with my career. And it ended up being really, really wonderful. So that's the biggest advice I can give folks is, be prepared, be open to opportunities, and be willing to take some risks at some point.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Renee, do you want to go next?
I think as far as resources, I was lucky enough to get a scholarship. I think it was my sophomore year, and it came with a summer internship. So that really helped me experience the workforce, get to know people outside of school, and kind of learn how to interact with people within the workforce. I'm super appreciative of that internship, and it was really awesome. I'm glad that it came with that. Another resource that I found valuable was being part of ASC. Even when you're in the UH chapter or the student chapter, you interface with people within the workforce, and you get to start building your network and get to know people, and it kind of increases your network of resources. So that was really beneficial to me. I would encourage anybody to get involved in your organizations and use that's available to you. I agree with Heather. Take advantage of opportunities that come up. They might not be what you had planned, but they're going to be really helpful in building who you become.
Thank you so much. We'll move on to the next question.
What types of mentors did you have?
And Renee, if you want to start us off on this one.
Sure. There's no real mentors that stand out a lot, but since we're talking women in STEM, I want to mention my mom and my grandma. They weren't in STEM. My grandma was a secretary. My mom was working in the State Department of Agriculture, but they were mentors to me as far as strong women that do what they want to do and pursue their dreams. Because in my grandma's time, a lot of people stayed homemakers, but she went to school. She went to a secondary school, got her education, and became a secretary. And that wasn't necessarily common in her time. And my mom was one of the first supervisors within the State Department of Agriculture, and a single mom. So it kind of taught me about strong women and taught me that I can do whatever I want to do and put my mind to. So they were my mentors.
Thank you so much for sharing. Heather Kimball, do you want to go next?
Sure. I mentioned some of the teachers that I had in high school and college that really just inspired me directly within my field. But I think in addition to my parents being mentors, my great aunt is one of my most significant mentors. In August, she celebrated her 103rd birthday. She's an amazing woman. Got her PhD at 80, studying different artistic styles in Africa. And she's just been all over the world doing amazing things, and just espouses that philosophy that you're never too old to stop learning. And I love that about her. And she's been someone throughout my life that I've just gotten a lot of inspiration from.
Thank you for sharing that, Heather. Heather Bada, would you like to go?
Sure. Yeah. So I think in terms of mentors, I've had right now, at least the mentors are the women that I work with. I think so. I'm in a field of engineering called systems engineering, and it's not necessarily like building the spacecraft. It's more like getting to creatively understand how it all works together. And I think a lot of the women I work with today have been able to show me that you can still, communicate in a world that was like very much dominated by men many years ago, and still be successful, being able to like speak your mind and articulated your creativity in a way that still becomes clear to other people. And I'm not good at it yet, as you might be able to tell, but it's kind of where I'd like to get to with it, to be able to communicate, the visions that you have about how the spacecraft works together. So I guess, yeah, a lot of the women that I work with today that are older and have been in the field for a little bit longer have been my main mentors throughout the years. And then I've also had a handful of other just, I guess, mentors or people that I've met along the way, bosses that I've had that have encouraged me to stick with it and not give up. I think the people in your life that, continuously tell you to stick with it are good people to have around, because when the times get hard and you run into challenging problems, it's really easy to run away from it. But I know I'm just really thankful that I have people telling me to keep going. So always keep those people around, because they're good to have in times of challenging times.
Thank you, Heather. And also thank you for noting the importance of women supporting women. That's just amazing that you had women mentors like that. Hoku, what types of mentors did you have?
Hey, aloha mai, mahalo for sharing, ladies, and thank you for asking the question. So the mana wahine, the mentors, especially the female mentors that I have that really stuck out while I was listening to everybody share their responses, was to start my mom and my grandma, all the wahine in my family, but mostly my mom and my grandmothers, who just were really strong, driven women that were passionate in caring for their families and giving us, establishing a really strong foundation for us women. My mom was a single mom. She raised three daughters, and just looking at her and her drive and intent to make sure that we always were cared for, a roof over our head, clothes on, clothes, food on the table, all of that stuff. So they really laid that foundation for me, just to see that we can, women can. We do it all the time. We birth babies, we raise them, and so we're special. But going into my academic life, really looking at the ladies that really stood out to me was, of course, my mentor and graduate advisor, Dr. Misaki Takabayashi and Palika Andrade. They provided pathways for us to really conduct the science in a way that we felt that was culturally and relevant and for our communities here in Hawaii. So that was really impressionable. And then, of course, my lahui of mana wahine, like Canoe Shige and Lauren Kapono, all of these young ladies that are coming up that are package deals that I see. And I feel so hopeful for our future, watching them and seeing them and knowing that they're so grounded in who they are as a scientist and as a Kanaka, and being present in these conversations. So I look to them as guidance. They think I'm funny for always saying mahalo for raising me, but they did. They raised me in my identity as a mana wahine, as a wahine, I'm a kua wahine, as a mother, as a woman, as a scientist, everything. So I really am thankful for their presence in my life. So mahalo nui for asking the question.
That's wonderful, Hoku. And a common theme I just saw is that us as women, we can all uplift each other and help each other achieve our goals. So thank you for all the insight and advice that you all just shared. Moving on to the next question. What challenges have you faced as a woman in STEM? Hoku, you can start.
Mahalo nui. Yeah, I think so. I'll kind of touch on maybe some things. So internal challenges with self, I'll start with, because I think that's where it starts. And that was really my personal belief in myself, that I could do it, that I could take on this commitment to myself to gain, to get my degrees and move forward in that pathway. So belief in self, that confidence in knowing that that I'm capable, so those were really the biggest things. And then so conquering those challenges, was really kind of where it had to start for me. As a single mom, it was even more layered because I'm like, how am I going to do this with my 3 kids? I've got 3 boys, they've got to go to school. How am I going to better their life so we're not on public assistance forever? But yet I'm only one person. So those were other internal challenges. And, you know, not giving up on yourself and going, oh, I can't do it now. You know, I'm a single mom, whatever. I can't get a college degree or go to college. It's not for me. So really battling those internal conversations with self. And then I think some of the challenges just externally was I felt like I had a good hui of people, but more resources for us to help support just women in STEM in general. And then also, of course, finances are always a challenge. You always need money. Money guides things. If there was always some sort of support academically to lessen the loan commitments and all of those mechanical things that we need help with in order to go to college, that was challenges. But and what else? I felt like I really had a good hui of people around me and resources here in Hawaii that that provided kind of filled gaps for me in that space. But yeah, internal self challenges and financials, belief. Yeah, mahalo for asking.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story of resilience. Renee, would you like to go next?
Sure. My first challenge that I want to talk about isn't necessarily women specific. It could be, or it could be like influenced by things, but I found that one of the biggest challenges I face in my career is dealing with difficult people and different personalities. And it's something that when you go to school for a career in STEM, you aren't really prepared for it. The stereotype of engineers are, you know, the kind of introverted nerds that just kind of sit at their computer. And the reality of the career is you need to interact with a lot of different people. So there's a learning curve to it. Another thing is that on the same note, a lot of people don't have a really strong background in the writing side because it's more science based, but written communication and verbal communication is huge and it's really important. So I just like to encourage everybody to not like discount those. They're really important in your career and in getting your points across. And it's difficult when you have to deal with people who are really weak in those areas. As far as being a woman in STEM, I have experienced times when people talk over you. They discount you, especially I've noticed older males will do it more. But for the most part, people have been great and it's been really, really fun.
Amazing. Thank you. Heather Bottom?
Sure. So I thought of 2 different like big challenges that I faced. The first one is kind of like philosophical. It was more of like an internal battle. So as I've described it, kind of have always had these 2 different sides, like artistic side and then like super technical math nerdy side. And so for a really long time, when I transitioned into engineering, I had a hard time trying to juggle how to bring in some of that creativity into such like a technical black and white focused engineering world. And so, you know, I think that you kind of have to learn to embrace all aspects of you, you know, and for me, it always felt kind of like half and half. And, you know, for other people, it might be like 25, 75%, whatever it is. But to always kind of have all aspects of that in whatever you do, you know, to stay true to yourself. I think that you will bring to the table like what will be useful to your team and to the project and the people that you work with. But that has always been kind of a struggle for me. And I wouldn't say necessarily for engineering, but just in life, is to try to figure out, you know, who you are and what what's your purpose? How do you bring, what do you bring to the table? So that was kind of a philosophical, identity crisis, I guess, more or less. And then in terms of like actual challenges in the workplace, I think, what Renee touched on about being able to communicate verbally and through written language is a real challenge. You're going to work with a lot of different people that have different personalities. I started, in middle school and high school, college, you work on teams that are very small. At NASA, I work with teams of like 800 people, and so I'm constantly talking to people and understanding the knowledge in their brains and trying to communicate it to other people. And bridge gaps between the knowledge to make sure that the project comes together appropriately. But I will say I don't think I'm an extrovert. So I definitely am good with like written language, but for me, it's been a struggle to like try to articulate verbally some of the challenges and knowledge that I've gained on a project. And so, like I said, I've kind of looked towards other women and just trying to better myself constantly with that sort of written or verbal communication, because it certainly is a challenge. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And yes, it's so important to find your own voice and really stay true to who you are. Heather Kimball.
Yeah, so, I'll reiterate a number of the points that other folks have made. Certainly first and foremost was the lack of other women mentors within my field. And then certainly a sense of being talked over, or at least having a lower set of expectations. Like when I just performed my job at the level, like average level, that was something extraordinary in terms of some of what my male peers expected. And there is this sort of double standard, or was this sort of double standard about performance. And one of the things that I've tried to do since is when I'm in a meeting with other women colleagues, I definitely try to amplify their comments and the things that they're doing. And I think Renee kind of touched on this about being talked over. And if a woman in my group in a meeting says something really smart, I do try to go ahead and say, that's a great idea, so-and-so, and amplify that voice. And I think that's something we need to do for each other. The other thing that I'll say is that as a woman that is both in science and in politics, there's something about ambition and the words that we use about women who are ambitious and want to accomplish a lot. If a man is ambitious, that's something that's rewarded and appreciated about them. But if a woman has that same ambition and wants to succeed in her career, she's, there's all sorts of negative words associated with that. If she wants to take on a leadership position, she's bossy. If she's going to get in there and fight, well, she's just angry. There's a whole different set of vocabulary about women that want to succeed and be ambitious, which I think is disadvantageous to us. So I encourage all of us when our young daughters are out there telling other people what to do, tell them they have good management skills instead of that they're bossy. The final point that I'll make is just about how the STEM field and academia in particular is not well suited to the typical lifestyle of their life cycle of a woman in the sense that, I had a pretty successful career in genetics, one that I was really happy with. I decided to take time off to raise my kids. And after 7 years of being a stay-at-home mom, the on-ramp back onto my career didn't exist. There was no way to get back into my field because it had evolved so rapidly in that amount of time that I would have been starting all over. And that's actually why I went back to graduate school and went in a whole different direction from genetics. And so I think we need to do more in the STEM fields and in academia to support women and those sorts of life choices. Another example, which doesn't apply to me specifically, but if you're in academia and you want to get tenure, that's very difficult to do if you want to take time to raise a family, because you have to be producing papers and doing research over this period of time. And so you don't accomplish that same goal. And that's why you see more women in universities being lecturers and not having full tenured positions, because that pathway is so difficult if you want to start a family.
Yes, thank you for that. Moving on to the next question.
Yeah. Well, and first of all, yeah, thank you for sharing some of those challenges. And then also, yeah, some of the, I think, solutions also that we should start thinking about as a society. Very important considerations. All right. I think we have 2 questions left. So our second to last question is, what is your favorite memory in your current career? And Heather, if you want to take us away with this one.
Favorite memory. You put me on the spot. There's been so much. I mean, I have to say that everything I've done, you know, I talked earlier about being open to opportunity and the chances that come your way and grab onto those chances. But one of the key things is to just always have your sort of North Star that tells you, okay, gives you some direction as to what chances you're going to take. Maybe you don't want to take them all. And for myself, my main North Star was just whatever I was doing, I wanted to be contributing in some way. When I was working in genetics, you know, I was contributing to our understanding of human health and our ways to address health problems through genetics. And then when I got into tropical conservation biology, it was more about climate change and this global challenge that we find ourselves in now. And now as a politician, again, I'm looking at ways to just make my little part of the world a slightly better place. And so I think the favorite thing that I have is sort of just a general sense that everything that I've done in my career has in some way contributed to the betterment of humanity. And that's been my North Star and something that just gives me great satisfaction.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Renee, what is your favorite memory?
I don't necessarily have a favorite memory, but my favorite moments in my career are those when somebody expresses how a project I've worked on has changed their life for the better, or how my work was meaningful for them. So for example, if there's an article in the paper where people are talking about how much they appreciate having the Westfield Civic Center and how it's easy to have everything in one place and have it consolidated now and have that space to use, that makes me feel good that my work helped them. Or when the residents were happy that Umama Bridge was reopened and they had this nice bridge that was safe, that made me feel good because I had a part in that. And that's why I do what I do, is I like to contribute to the community and make other people's lives better.
Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, it seems like contribution is definitely a common theme, and yeah, very commendable. And thank you all of you for everything that you have done. Heather, do you want to go next?
Sure. Yeah. So I absolutely agree. I think just generally for me, any sort of exploration of outer space is a really meaningful part of the work that I do. Giving back to our knowledge on Earth is a really big part of it. But I have to say, the last year was, we had a really big moment where we landed a rover on Mars. And the coolest thing in my career so far has been seeing the video come back from that, because I worked so hard on it. Sorry. So, anyways, I just stopped breastfeeding my daughter, so I'm emotional now. But yeah, it was the coolest thing I've ever done. And I worked so hard for many, many years. And it was in the middle of the pandemic and it was insane. And I had to travel while pregnant to like launch the rover. And I was scared out of my mind that I was going to get COVID. And NASA's insane and they have COVID protocols like through the roof. So anyways, that was my most exciting moment so far in my career. And I hope to have many more of those, but landing a rover on Mars has been the coolest one so far.
Well, oh my goodness, that's really, really incredible and completely understandable that is like such an amazing memory. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing and being a part of that. And yeah, during the pandemic, on top of all of that, it's
yeah. The next mission I'm working on is supposed to help with climate change. So, we pivot in every way, but we'll get there.
Also super important. Yeah. Hoku?
Oh, aloha mai. Yeah, no. So right now I can kind of relate with Heather in her experience with the ROV and everything. So right now, currently, along with being the Rapido Death Specialist, I also host a program, Nava'amao, that uses outrigger canoes to care for our oceans. And it's my PICO program. It's something that I do for the love of our oceans and the love of canoes and love of our culture and community, everything. And so we were just awarded our first huge grant that will support our efforts for 3 more years. And it's just such a really good feeling, like what Heather was commenting on, like having your eye cast on the North Star, and what the other Heather was saying about just following your passions is like being able to move in the va'a through the currents of life and using it as a metaphor to help me get through challenges and successes in my own personal process and voyage. And then knowing that I could provide this space and platform for other kids to grow upon. Like we just hosted our first cohort of 13 kids. And I was thinking, because of COVID, we would be losing everything would be really impacted. We had to be really mindful and methodical about how we cared for our kids and how we got them in canoes and how we perpetuated all of this hana and support that we've had. And to my surprise, everybody stayed committed, and we were able to, like how Heather is able to take the ROV all the way up into the universe and the cosmos. We just got out of a meeting yesterday with a hui of scientists and researchers and cultural practitioners that are up in the monument right now that are deploying large ROVs to the deepest depths of our oceans to map our ocean floors and see what, So it's like listening to all of our conversations, I was like, wow, it's amazing to me. Like if you just follow your now, if you just follow that pico pull, that one that's not in your brain, but down in your gut or wherever, and be fearless and go have the, resolve, it's okay, we got this. The va'a will take us where we gotta go. That mentality of just, I was just so surprised to be blessed with more support and recognition that what we're doing is meaningful and people support it. That was heavy for me. And then seeing our ocean realms and the deep, deep oceans and looking at the palawa, the big humpbacks and the corals and the limu, and whoa, it's heavy. So I'm just super thankful. And then, so that's where I'm at with just being stoked. My favorite memory right now is just being able to support our generations of stewards through va'a.
Thank you so much for sharing, and truly thank all of you guys for your contribution and also for being, role models for other women in STEM, just like seeing everything that you all have done. So this is going to lead us into our last question, which is, what advice do you have for middle schoolers who may be watching this, or high schoolers who may be watching this? How would you encourage them to pursue careers in STEM, or kind of, just why should people be excited about STEM careers, especially as women, just because we are still underrepresented in the field? Hoku, could you start us off?
Yeah, sure. So I think there's so much advice I want to give to middle school students, especially the young wahine that are coming up. The one thing is, middle school is such a challenging time in our lives of like identity crises and social acceptance and academic success and all of these things. And, you know, the advice that I would like to just give any child at that time in their lives is they're trying to acclimate to who they are as just an adult, and transitioning into that realm is find a space that grounds you so that you can build upon it and create the goals and the futures that you want, like to help develop that internal security and belief in self and self-confidence that you'll need to move forward in your life with your passions. And be fearless, holamua, you know, steer that ba'a, charge forward and believe in yourself. I think that's the hugest one, is until we believe in ourselves and our abilities, and once we establish that, then we can move forward to creating our goals and setting our future. But I think that's it. And for girls, young Manavahine coming up, even more fearless. Embrace all of that identity of Manavahine that is inside you, ignite it, apply it, implement it, and holomua. Yeah, I think that's the foundation.
Thank you so much for all of that advice. And I think as a follow-up email to all the attendees, and just on the bottom, I think we'll probably quote some of these like big pieces of advice, and definitely believing in yourself and being fearless. I think that's really huge. So thank you. Renee, do you want to go next?
Sure. I would say try new things. Don't be afraid to, you know, get out there and join clubs or take advantage of opportunities that are presented to you. If it's something that you're not good at, or you feel that you failed at, don't let that discourage you. If it's something that you enjoy, just keep going, and, you know, take this time to I don't want to say experiment, but have new experiences, because it gets a lot harder the older you get to pivot and switch gears. Take advantage of all of the resources that are available to you now. There's a lot of clubs, there's a lot of organizations like this that are trying to promote STEM education and help connect you with mentors, and just take advantage of all of that and have fun. Enjoy your time as middle schoolers, because it gets harder.
Thank you so much. Taking advantage of opportunities definitely seems to be a recurring theme also throughout some of the other questions. And I think that's like a really good reminder to everyone. Heather Bottom, do you want to go next?
Sure. I love all the advice is amazing. I totally agree. Yeah, I guess so. I'm trying to think of like how I was when I was in middle school. I hated middle school. I honestly think it was the worst time of my life. Hopefully you all are not having that sort of a time, but I was a huge nerd and I had no idea who I was. And, you know, if it helps to know that, you know, it takes a really long time to figure out, you know, what you want to do with your life. And so it doesn't really matter. And so you should always, I think, just be true to yourself. And I think Hoku said it really well, to ground yourself in whatever your interests are at the time, and just bring, you know, all sorts of aspects of your brain to the forefront, to try to contribute and be who you are to the projects that you work on, or, you know, individual work as well. But yeah, just stay true to who you are. And I guess in opposite advice, I think it only gets better from there. So yeah.
Awesome, thank you so much. And last but certainly not least, Heather Kimball.
Yeah, so the first thing I'll say is that girls being in STEM as a career is pretty darn awesome. So just go for it. It's something that will always challenge you and inspire you, and it's definitely a way to make your mark on the world and make the world a better place. I know that this question was probably asked because when we look at middle school, boys and girls are kind of on the same level, and then at some point the girls start dropping out of the athletic programs and the robotics programs and the science classes, and The only reason that I think that happens is because there's some sort of narrative out there that the science world, the STEM world, is not the place where girls belong. Well, I'm going to tell you, you belong here and we're waiting for you. So please continue on that path, continue with that passion that you have in middle school, keep with it through high school. Don't let other people tell you who you should be and what you should look like and what you should care about. We've got the door open for you, and we are just waiting for you to come and join us. And when you get here, we're going to have your back. So go girls. Thank you.
Yay! Thank you so much all for all of that advice, for all of the inspiration. And now we're going to move into kind of the question and answer session. So I will moderate some of the questions that came up, or I think one question came up in the chat. And then if attendees want to ask any additional questions. So one of the questions was about STEAM and STEM being interchangeable. Let me find the question. Can STEM also be called STEAM? And yeah, could you guys talk a little bit about STEM and STEAM? Because I know that has actually been kind of a transition that's been happening and why it might be referred to as STEM versus STEAM. Does anyone want to jump in on this one? And otherwise, does everyone want to contribute to this question as well?
I'll jump in. I do tend to refer to it now as STEAM rather than STEM, because I do think the separation of the arts as something that's not scientific is kind of a false separation. And I think there's a lot about the arts, especially now that you're incorporating other mediums that are more technical into the fine arts. I think that there's a tie-in between the overall STEM picture with the arts as well. And I did want to go back to something that Hoku was talking about before, which is this melding of what is science from the Western science perspective, and then from the traditional science perspective. And that's another really exciting thing that I think is happening here in Hawaii that I think Hoku can maybe talk about. She and I both participate in a program. She's better at it than I am with the Hala Ohia. And, there is this space now where in recognizing that Western science is one way to explore the natural world and explore the sciences, but then there's all of these other resources that come from generational knowledge and traditional practices that should also be considered a science as well. And what I'm really excited about is the integration of these two different approaches. I'm going to put you on the spot, Hoko, and see if you want to add to that a little bit, because I think you've been tied into that a little bit more, but I think there's a lot of exciting opportunities there too.
I unmuted. Aloha, Heather. Mahalo, Heather. Yeah, I think a lot of us in this conversation have been shifting from STEM to STEAM and recognizing the importance of art in that acronym. And I think too, so first to just kind of build upon what Heather was bringing up, this blending of knowledge systems. So we do it a lot in the VAA program, and like what I was sharing earlier with the Chiaholi STEM program, really finding a space to enable that to happen. And what we were finding, what I found personally, is the blending of these two sciences and knowledge systems, they tend to overlap in a space where one, and I don't want to say teeters off, but where one starts to move it, so the other one picks up, right? And so with Indigenous science knowledge and practice, there are different tools and resources that we use to understand our relationship to our natural environment and the historical evolution of our environment that's been expressed through our Hawaiian stories, chants, Olelo no Ea, Hawaiian proverbs and such, and then also with blending that with the Western science tools of data collection and understanding the significance of both within that research project or community-based monitoring effort, however you want, whatever you want to apply it to, it's just really recognizing the relevance of both, and also really it also opens up that pathway for other scientists and practitioners to come into the conversation. As we know here in Hawaii, I can hold the palapala, the degree that says I'm a marine scientist, I'm certified, boom, I got it, right? But I don't have the knowledge of that space in the ocean that the lava'i'a, the fisherman has, that has generational ties to a practice that has been taught to him throughout his life history and throughout the generations of his or her family, right? And so recognizing the importance of both scientists and Ike Moana, that relationship that we have and the knowledge that we have to place is important. And so I think it adds more substance. And I always say it becomes an all-encompassing experience that adds the fat. The data is like the skeletal structures. Yeah, the p-values can go for days, but what does that statistical result of a p-value that tells us if we're going to accept or reject our null hypotheses? What does that mean to the auntie that go pick limu for her whole for generations in her family? How does she understand that p-value? What does that mean to her? Or what does that mean to the lava'i'a that's catching fish and he's noticing something that's changing in his fish populations during the time that he gathers? So it's really combining the two and recognizing the relevance and importance of both within how we care for our environments and our communities here in Hawaii and throughout Polynesia. I think it's really becoming something that's more at the forefront of how we practice. So that's, did I get that? And then one thing I wanted to talk about with this scheme and adding art and also recognizing that our keiki, I have boys, science gets frustrating for them, but they'll understand it more, like physics. I always explain physics to my son through surfing. And so once he can apply it to a real world situation that he's always in, then he better understands what physics means in a real life situation. So adding art, we have different learning styles with kids, and some ways they can digest information differently. So really recognizing the importance of art within science, technology, engineering, math is I think important and very relevant. I don't know.
Thank you so much. Do any of the other panelists have anything to add to this particular question? And also I'll ask the participants, if you have any more questions, if you want to unmute yourself or add them into the chat now would be a good time. We'll give it a couple moments, and while we wait, I did have one follow-up question because I think something that came up a lot was also networking and just how important, relationship building is in, number one, creating a good kind of support network for yourself, but also just being able to have those connections to, help you in your career. And do you have any tips for networking and building relationships, both in a professional and in, an academic world? Because I know that's very different from, of course, building personal relationships. Does anyone want to speak to that one?
I can speak to it a little bit. So I guess for myself, at least, like I mentioned, I'm more of an introvert. And so I always find it very frightening to go up to someone and meet them for the first time and start just chatting. Unfortunately, that's, I think, a big part of it. For me, at least, I learned that to create a network of people, you have to connect on some level. And what's actually interesting and what I've learned throughout the years is that it's possible to connect to people on all sorts of different things. It doesn't have to just be boring talk about the weather, but everybody comes from a different background and they have their own story. And if you kind of get to talking about those different points, you can connect about something that's totally different from what you're working on, and then, when it comes down the line or whatnot, you can start reconnecting with that person over baking pie or, who knows what it is, or surfing or, scuba diving or whatnot, or traveling. And so I think we're all people. And so at the end of the day, the network isn't about work necessarily. It's not about, doesn't have to be, at least. I mean, it can be for sure. But I think at least for me, I joke that what I do now is I'm a systems engineer, but I'm like, oh, I'm a social engineer, because I feel like I'm constantly talking to people all the time and trying to understand their problems and connect with them. And if I can connect with them about like baking pie, for example, I can understand how their brain works a little bit better. And then I can like kind of understand how they're talking about their problems. So sounds kind of creepy, I guess, but it's certainly a way that I've found, at least for myself, to create kind of a network. So.
No, thank you so much. I think many of us are introverts, and it is difficult to kind of find that middle ground of still being able to network and make these connections. So that's really great advice. Thank you. Does anyone else want to speak to this particular question?
I second everything that Heather said. But I also wanted to add, don't like discount anyone, or be careful like what you say about people or how you treat people, because you never know when you're gonna be in a position and you go to meet with the head of some agency and it's somebody that you've gone to school with or somebody that you've had a meeting with, or a lot of times there'll be somebody that you didn't like, but they're in a position of power now. So just keep in mind that, especially if you stay local or you move to a small town, you are gonna encounter these people within your sphere. So just keep in mind that the world is small, as big as it is.
That's a very good reminder. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I
Alright.
couldn't agree more with what Renee is saying. I mean, we live in a small community. Everybody does know everybody, and I kind of espouse with something called the 4 agreements, and two of the items in the 4 agreements are: 1, be impeccable with your word. So always be honest, always be upfront. Don't try to mislead people. And then the other one is to not make assumptions. Don't make assumptions of where other people are coming from, what they care about. Ask them, be open, have that conversation. And in addition to that, I always like to think about, for you to succeed doesn't necessarily mean that someone else has to lose. We can all lift each other up. And one of the things that I've seen with women's groups and women interactions is that there can be a tendency to compete with each other. And it's this idea that, well, I need to make myself shine more. But I have found that if I'm continuing to amplify other women, and I don't think they've got to lose for me to win, we can all win, we can all support each other. That has been huge in terms of relationship building and network building, but it's also just huge in terms of moving things forward. So I can, if there's one point I can make here, is just focus on lifting each other up, because we can do more collectively than we can on our own, and we can by lifting each other up, we're each in our own ways all that much more successful.
Mahalo nui, Heather. I want to add one thing to that, if I can, to what Heather just said. And I brought it up at another Women in STEM conference, and I tell this to my kids. So one thing that I learned in the master's program, there's all this mechanical stuff of creating your project, implementing your project, collecting the data, interpreting your results, blah, 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 blah. One thing I learned in my master's experience, and I think it ties into what Heather and Renee are saying, is how to really work with different personalities that you wouldn't necessarily engage with personally. So it's like Va'a. Everybody has a different reason for why we come to Va'a. We have different purposes and functions in Va'a, but yet our backgrounds, are different. And so I always tell my kids, somebody coming into the conversation, whether they have a backstory that they may not tell us or not share, that we may never know, but to honor that backstory with respect and compassion helps us strengthen and uplift each other, right? Like when I was in Chiaholi, I came as a single mom, scared of the decisions I made, how am I going to care for my kids, how am I going to feed my family, all of these things. Nobody knew that when I came to Chiaholi. They didn't understand how much they gifted me with strength just by being in that office and being around them. I never shared or anything, but that was something that they gave to me that helped me strengthen my belief in myself. So when you come into that conversation, you don't know what you're offering that person when you're in there by just having compassion and respect for their presence in the conversation.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys all so much. I know I've really appreciated all of the advice and just hearing your stories and everything. And I really hope this will be beneficial to all of the participants here today and to anyone else who may watch this recording. We're going to move on to the little activity for the last couple minutes of this event. But again, just if we could all just give like a round of applause with reactions or whatever for all of you, because truly thank you for your contribution. Thank you for inspiring us and being here today to really share your stories. With that, I'm also going to stop sharing so that we can go on to the Kahoot. And let's see here. Claire, can you please put the game pin in there and the website so we can.
Yes, I'm just gonna share my screen and then the game pin should be there.
So if everyone just goes to the website that I'm going to put into the chat, then you just kind of enter the game pin and then we can all play for the last couple of minutes. It's all just about kind of some statistics for women in STEM.
Okay, can you guys see the pin?
Yes, perfect. Thank you, Claire. The Kahoot music, that reminds me a lot of middle school and high school too. I hope some of your the participants here, I hope some of your teachers use this as well. I always thought it was a fun learning tool. Okay.
Are we playing the game yet?
Not yet. I think we're waiting for everyone to enter. Are all of the
Oh,
participants
okay, great.
in? Yeah.
I see 5 of us.
I see 5 of us as well. I think there should be 7. Oh, wait. No, I think that's good because Claire, you're not in, right?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Then I think that's all of us.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. So the first question is, what % of the US workforce are women? The answer is 48%, so nearly half.
Oh, so close.
Next question is, what % of the US STEM workforce are women? And this is the STEM workforce. Okay, the correct answer is 27%. So when I first learned about this statistic, I was really surprised because that's super low. So yeah, there's definitely a large gender gap that still exists today. Okay, third question is, which sector of STEM has the greatest gender gap? The correct answer is engineering. Yeah, I believe that only 17% are women. So Yeah, it's a very, very large gender gap. And good job to Hoku, who's first. Next question is, what % of computer science majors are women? The correct answer is 19%. So just like engineering, I think computer science and engineering both have very low like numbers of women who comprise the workforce. Next question is, what factors perpetuate the gender gap in STEM? So the correct answer is actually all of these because, yeah, gender stereotyping, a lack of role models, male-dominated cultures, and just a lack of self-confidence can all perpetuate the gender gap.
And that's why thank you all for being role models for us.
Yes, yes. So thank you so much for just coming to participate today. So next question is, what percentage of women earn STEM degrees in college? Okay, so the correct answer is 53%. So it's actually quite high. It's more than half, but I think there's a different statistic about the amount of women who actually end up going into the STEM field, even though they have a STEM degree. Next question is, what are the benefits of having more women in the STEM workforce? And again, the correct answer is all of them: a narrow gender pay gap, enhanced economic security for women, increased diversity, and prevents biases from the STEM field. All of these are benefits, and yeah, having more women in the STEM workforce is great. Okay, on average, how much higher are men's annual salaries in STEM? The correct answer is $15,000. Yeah, it's actually quite high, but as more women enter the STEM workforce, hopefully the gender pay gap will decrease as well. And the final question is a true or false question. You can make a difference by going into STEM in the future. True or false? And yes, this is of course true. Yeah, if you go to STEM, you can definitely make a difference, just like these amazing women on our speaker panel today who have done so much to just help their communities and really made a difference and serve as such amazing role models for the next generation of women. So I will stop sharing. Yeah, and I think that kind of brings us to a close today.
Yes, thank you all so much for being here. We really appreciate your time, your experiences, your advice. Belle, thank you so much for joining us today here in real time. And we really hope that this recording will also be really helpful and useful to all of the girls who watch this in middle school and high school, and even other women in college, such as myself. I always learn from hearing from people like all of you guys. Truly an inspiration and really great role models to have.
Mahalo, ladies, for putting this together. You guys are an awesome reflection of what our future looks like for our mana wahine. So thank you for coordinating this and putting it together.
Yeah, ditto. Well done, ladies. Thank you so much for the invitation to come. And it was great to meet Renee and the other Heather and both of you. So thanks so much for putting this on.
Thank you
Same
all.
here. Thank you very much for putting it on. Good job.
Thank you. Have a wonderful
Thank
rest
you
of your
all so
Sunday.
much. Yes.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye, malama.